Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Beers with Bill. It's my great pleasure to welcome back Adam Wilson. He is the Ontario Manitoba Territory Manager for Country Malt Group. Adam, welcome back.
Thank you much, Bill. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, I was lax. I apologize. I did not get the beers out to everybody until yesterday. But can you tell me why you picked the 4 beers that you picked?
I did. Every single one of the reasons. Number one, we're moving into the season for all of these beers. The Oktoberfest beer needs to be out now. Red ales, we're moving into the colder weather. The same with the brown ale, and the same with the porter. So they're all malt forward beers. So they make me happy. I feel like Summer clocked out right at the end of her shift this year. She wasn't sticking around for overtime, so we're jumping right into those malt forward beers, and it's perfect timing.
I think that's an apt way to describe it. Summer just decided, hey, the 20th happened. Goodbye, I'm gone.
Yes. Yeah. And it was literally overnight. Like the first day of fall felt like fall. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, my brother-in-law was saying that when he got up the next morning, there was actually frost on people's roofs in Cambridge. So
a bit much. I went into my local grocery store, and there's a lady there who, God, I love her. She's hilarious, but she is like one of the grumpiest human beings I've ever met. And she was just like, I'm tired of winter already. we're not there yet, my dear. We're not there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no, we're not there at all. So which one would you want to talk about first?
Well, let's go lightest to darkest. We'll start with the Oktoberfest lager from Sons of Kent down in Chatham. So first of all, I love these guys. I find that Sons of Kent they just sit under the radar of those breweries that are doing big things, and I think that they have an awful lot to offer. And I think Colin makes some incredible beers down there. And the first time that I got one of the Feist beers from him, I was blown away. So it's basically the malt bill is made up of 2-row, which is the base malt in most beers, and in Munich. So Munich or a little bit of Vienna could be tossed in there as well. So that Munich gives it the super grainy, nicely biscuity flavor that you expect out of those Oktoberfest beers. Plus it gives it that nice light caramelized, lightly orange kind of goldy flavor to it, and it's a very lovely beer. The lighting in here makes it look like it's red, but rest assured it's not. It's yeah, and it drinks nicely. It's like all the beers that I pick here, you're really getting a sense of what malt brings to beer, and it's everybody's favorite player in the beers is typically the hops, but you can't have a good beer without a proper malt bill in it, and these beers really show that off.
Okay. I'm going to ask a plain and simple question. Munich and Vienna malt, is that place of origin or style?
It's place of origin, but there is stylistic differences to it. They're very close to each other, but the Munich tends to be a bit more of that orangey color profile. See if I can get that a little bit closer. Yep. Than the Vienna. The Vienna is a bit lighter than this. So I find the Munich works a little bit nicer, or sorry, the Vienna works a little bit nicer as a base malt, because there's just more of that caramelization in the Munich that you don't want to overdo it with the Munich.
So would there be a Canadian replacement for those, or are you definitely, if a brewer, going to buy a Munich malt and a Vienna malt?
They are, but I mean, like we make our own Munich malt. Yeah. Like the malting company makes Munich, and we're very much, a lot of it is you find out the style, you find out what you're looking for, and it's like making a beer in different parts of the world. You can make an Irish stout in Saskatchewan, so it's just a matter of having the proper maltster who can kiln properly to get those flavor profiles that you want.
So you guys do continuous kiln, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's I don't know if I think I told you the last time that we were on. I just started, and I'd get the opportunity to get down to Montreal and get into the malt house and get the full tour of it. And I mean, as a beer lover and a beer nerd, I was so in my element. I came home and I was telling my wife, and she was like, I'm happy that you're happy, but I don't care. Yes.
I hear you.
I think that's fair.
So when you're running a continuous malt, when you make a switch over, do you just make a switch over, or do you empty the system and recharge it?
Sometimes it needs to be recharged. You got to do that clean out once in a while, but it's very, it's for the most part, you can do that. You can keep that flow going quite nicely. So sorry, I can't read that whole sentence there. What's the question from Mike there?
Yeah, did you have a specific spec you have to hit in order to sell it as a Munich malt, or is there leeway in your production?
There is leeway. If you take a look at COAs, the basically the bill of the colorization. And Mike knows this. There's a spec range for what a Munich malt is or what a Vienna is. So you're not going to be on like the color scheme on the SRM of dead on 4.5 or something along those lines. That's lower, obviously, but it's if you're up around, I'm guessing if you're up around probably 7 or 8, you're probably in the right range there. I'm just spitballing off the top of my head. I haven't actually looked at that color range in a while, so if I'm wrong on that one, Mike, my apologies there. But no, there's definitely range to fit within. There's no proprietary hold on the name, and it's very much like anything, unless you're doing like a caramel malt 20, that you want your Lullabond to be at 20L sort of thing, so within that range.
So that brings a couple of questions to my mind.
Probably
for your grains, are you solely sourcing domestic?
no. Country Malt Group and its parent company. So Country Malt Group is the distribution arm of United Malts. So primarily we're looking at selling Canada Malting Company because it's it's a backyard and it's our number one partner. But we have Breeze out of the States is our partners, Baird's, Best Malts out of Germany. I'm drawing a blank on a couple right now. Oh my God, that's terrible. Franco Belge out of Czech Republic. So we have partners all over the world that we sell their stuff, and in many different countries.
You contract growers here in Canada, or do you just buy in the open market?
No, we contract. We try to do as much for Canada Malting. We try to do as much in Canada as possible. So last year made it impossible. The drought we only got 60% of what we had scheduled to buy. So we actually had to bring a lot of malt from overseas last year. We brought stuff in from Amsterdam. We brought stuff in from Australia. And actually, part of the feel-good story behind it was, as I just mentioned, that we make our own Munich, but we actually decided, because we were bringing stuff in from overseas, that we wanted to have something that we could put on the market that would compare with Weyermann. So Weyermann is Weyermann's the name, and it's especially with their Pilsner. And so we made a Europils. We brought it over and sent it to Montreal, and we went through 8 or 9 iterations before we actually landed on one that we were willing to put out in the market and we were happy with. And that's actually the stuff that some of the stuff that we sent to the Iron Brewers competition was that. And I've been getting some fantastic feedback on it ever since.
Okay. So you were just at the Iron Brewers competition.
It was held in the Canadian one. The Ontario one was held in Hamilton at Clifford Brewing. And so that was That was on Friday night, and it was really cool. It's the first time I had taken part in one of these, and for those that don't know what it is, there you go, Derek. It is the what they do is the MBAA, the Master Brewers Association of America. They started this competition 12 years ago where they get different suppliers to supply ingredients. And then they make up little baggies of, so the yeast came from Escarpment this year and they used like a Quebec yeast. And so you had to use that. And then there was, our Euro pills from Canada Malting, and then Thomas Fawcett's threw in a dark malt, like a chocolate malt from them. And so you're getting all these different hops and all these different ingredients. And it's a bunch of amateurs or professional brewers, but they can't brew on professional equipment. So you have a bunch of people from Niagara College, you have a bunch of people that just are great home brewers. You had a couple of like the guys from Clifford jumped in, but they had to do it all on home brewing equipment. And it was really cool, some of the beers that they came up with.
So what was the most intriguing beer you tried at the Iron Brewers competition?
There was one, a guy did a Norwegian style. I mean, you should have heard this guy. I was just like, I am so out of my element with what this guy is talking about. And it was like, he did like a non-boiled mash, which you can't do it on a professional scale. There's too much health and safety risks involved with that. But it was one of the most unique beers that I've had in quite some time. I'm like, I don't know if this is infected or it's supposed to taste this way. I think I like it. I don't know what's going on here. But I was enthralled in how passionate he was about talking about it. And I was like, are you Norwegian? And he was like, nah, I'm just an Irish kid that really gets excited about stuff like this when I go down rabbit holes. And I was like, that's a lot of fun. Like, good for you.
How was the gender mix?
Better than you would expect.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it's still, what, we're still at, I mean, there was probably still a 70-30 split in that room. But, I mean, you're starting to see more and more of it. One of the women that I talked to, she is retired from like 30 years in government and was interested in learning how to brew beer. So she's in her second semester at Niagara College. I'm like, that's a hell of a way to learn how to homebrew. Like, good for you. Like, and so, wow. I mean, yeah, it was great to see. There was one woman there who's just started up with, she was working in the tasting room at Clifford and is now in the cellaring side and is learning to be an assistant. And so she did like a 3% Kolsch that turned out really good. So it was nice to see.
That is interesting. A 3% Kolsch.
Yeah. She told me that she had tried something else and for whatever reason, something messed up. And so she was just like, shit, like, this is all I have left. What am I going to make out of this? And, and went with a 3% Kolsch. It was like, all right, sweet, let's give it a go. Much nicer mouthfeel than I was expecting it to be. It was really good.
So what would be the biggest takeaway from the competition?
That I need to learn how to brew. Honestly, like I watch these guys and I talk to these people and see how passionate they are. And I've been on the periphery of this industry for so long, and then and doing sales and stuff, and doing sales in this industry, what I'm doing right now, selling supplies and stuff. I need to up the game a little bit more because I find myself sometimes drowning in the amount of knowledge that these people that I sell to, they have a lot of questions and I don't always have the answer to it. I could find the answer. That's not a problem, but to be able to speak a little bit more on their level. So for me, that was it from a personal level. But also it was just nice to be able to go into a room like this where everybody's excited and everyone, like, you just saw all the different brewers going around at different tables and grabbing other people's beer. And there are different suppliers. I sat down with the BSG guy, my main competitor, at the end of the night, and him and I and a couple of other suppliers sat down and had a beer, and it's my main takeaway is still that there's nothing better than this industry.
That's true. When this industry works well, it does work well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's got its warts. Yeah, it's got its serious warts, but there's it's nice when you can just see the reason why you got into the industry every once in a while, and Friday night was one of those nights.
I'm glad you had a great time.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was nice. I mean, I would have rather done it in another environment somewhere south of the border like you thought I was going, but I'll
well, that I looked it up online, and that was the first thing that popped up, and I was like, oh, cool, he's getting to go to the American one. That would be interesting.
No, I would have. I mean, next year I'll keep you apprised of it. I thought that you had known, or I would have been like, oh, come on, get your ass in the car and come down to Hamilton for a couple of hours.
Well, if I'm not working Friday nights, I will. But right now, I'm working at Reverence on Friday nights.
Oh, are you really? Yeah. Sweet.
But I could, gee, to work or go drink beer. You probably got me there.
Right? I mean, you're at Reverence. You could probably drink some beer there too.
Second beer.
We're going to go to Cameron's in Oakville for the Beer Red Ale. I will be open about my, not distaste for red ales, but my lack of enthusiasm for it. At least there used to be. There was, you see something like this and it's gorgeous. Like it's just got that ruby red and almost, I mean, up to a few years ago, I will say I changed my mind on it, but before my palate previously was just like, I expect something big and delicious and thing. And I've always found that red ales have missed the mark on that. But I do find that there is something to this malt profile of the caramel malts that really stand out for me here. Some caramel, some crystal malts. I'll get to it in a second here, the difference between the two, but I've always wanted something either more malty or more hop forward, and I don't get it with most red ales. So cheers to Cameron's for doing this one for a while and doing it well. Yes, yeah, I think it's because my palate's a little bit better. Like that, the caramel flavors come through a lot more these days than they ever did before, and I know what I'm looking for these days, and I find that the caramel malts that are in this are very lovely.
Well, I have to agree with you.
Yeah.
Theirs has probably got the most definitive caramel notes that come through.
Yeah. I know both did one a few years ago, and I was still working with them. I recall that I was just like, it changed, that kind of where it started to change my mind on how I felt about red ales. I still avoid them for the most part because of how I used to feel about them. That, some things are hard to.
You've got the Flanders style, which is more of a sweet sour style.
Right.
And it doesn't, you don't get any malt forward in it. You get the Belgian sweet sour style.
Yes, you do. Yes.
And that was the predominance of red ales that people were putting out.
It's true. I mean, it's those early days of craft though in Canada. You were getting that pale, like just pale in comparison to anything really. Like, I mean, I'm such a brown ale guy and a porter guy that, I want something a little bit more substantial. But again, brewers are out there doing a little bit more with it. I don't whether they're just adding that extra bit of caramel malt to it that it makes it stand out a little bit more, but it really, those malts add this nice mouthfeel to it, and I find that it's well balanced.
Yeah.
Without boring.
So some of it is a move back into brewing traditional fall beers.
Yeah.
And so you're moving away from just brewing a red ale because it's we're coming up on November 11th.
Right.
And we're now starting to move into the idea of, doing fall box, which are ambers.
I would say that the industry was unfortunately led by the success of Rickards Red. And
Yeah.
if Rickards Red had any in caramel malts in it, you can you can call me a fool, because I'm pretty sure there's just some coloring put in that bad boy, and we were done with it, because there's nothing of the red scale that would it's like calling Kisa IPA. So
Yeah. I mean, I think it speaks to the maturity of the industry now.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. And I mean, I slag the style for the most part, but I mean, I will be finishing this beer tonight happily. Those are doing. Cameron's has been around. I mean, those guys are one of the OGs. Like, they have been doing this for a long time, and they've got a facility there, and they're one of those companies where you just hope that they hold on, because they don't have that share of the market that they used to have anymore, but they're still finding ways to do it.
Yep. Was there anything that you would think was trendy coming out of the Iron Brewers competition?
I still say that people have really leaned into the lagers and the pilsners.
Yep.
It's a lovely trend. I'm thrilled about it. I couldn't be happier with that right now. I've gone through my double IPAs and my throw every weird flavor at me, all the wonderful gruits that came out, and hey, look, that's a beet flavored beer, let's drink 12 of those, because that's a good idea.
What could go wrong with that, eh?
That's right. It's too bad Keith isn't here right now. We could tell a couple stories about that one, but I mean, I remember when we brought that one out. I was our rep out in BC, and the Tyrannosaurus, the Tyrannosaurus grew it, and I loved it. It was beet and hibiscus, and hibiscus gave it it rounded that flavor out. Like, it wasn't just, you weren't just getting smacked in the face with the beet, you were getting smacked in the face with the beet. Don't let anyone tell you differently, but it was the first time that I had tasted something like that. I was like, this is really cool. And I remember our sales director at the time, who is Jamie Kaufman. He's a legend, and he's now over at Beyond the Pale, and love the guy. And I remember the meeting, he was like, I don't know, this tastes like fucking dirt. Like, and it's a good thing we're out selling and you're here at the desk. So
Oh yeah. There's occasional times where someone would say something about a new beer sitting at the bar, and all I could think was, oh, thank God you're sitting here and there's only 2 other people, because if you said that in a room of 40 people, that's exactly what they would taste, even though that's not the taste.
That's
Wow.
Yeah, the fact that we're getting back into the industry as a whole is getting into the pilsners and the lagers, and there's some great ones that are out there right now. Like, you can throw pills. I mean, it's not all. I mean, it's nice to go to the market and be able to grab 4 or 5 different pilsners at any one time, and you don't have to grab steam whistle. Nothing against steam whistle. Steam whistle has made its mark for a reason, but it's a very unique flavor, for sure. But there's now other options out there, which is fantastic.
Yeah. So I got a couple questions.
Yes.
We had all these new hop trends that have been happening. Mike is curious, are there trends in malt that you're seeing coming out?
People are leaning, again, same thing. It's where's the beer going? That's what you're seeing, is where's the beer going? So if you're looking at something like right now, well, actually, prime example is flaked rice is just about impossible to get your hands on right now, because of all the rice lagers that are being made out there right now, and procurement on different levels haven't caught up to that yet, because it's still fairly new. Like, I was talking to one of the brewers in Toronto who's been brewing a great rice lager for a while, and he's just like, can everybody back off? I just want to make my beers, but it's one of those ones that we see right now. It's contact your, whether it's us or contact your supplier and say, what are you guys out of right now? And what is it you have the toughest time supplying? And you're looking at some of those adjuncts. But the Pilsners are selling well. In this time of year, it's also seasonality too. You're looking at, as we're moving in, you're looking at your chocolate malts are starting to pick up, and your those dark roasted malts, those are the things that are moving at the moment.
Yep. It's also curious, are there new experimental malts coming out?
There is. So this is the beauty part about the agricultural industry, and because it is really two different industries that we're looking at here, is it, and I'm not sure this is the right question or answer to the question you're being asked, but it's like hops. It takes probably 7 to 10 years from something to go from that experimental phase to being welcome into the industry as a whole. So when you're looking at, let's look at the hop side. Let's look at the hop side for a second. Look at something like Idaho 7. Idaho 7 seems like it just hit the market and it's friggin' everywhere, but that has been in development for 10 to 15 years, and finally it's getting out there. So, you're seeing more experimental malt varietals. So can you get a bigger, plumper kernel with a smaller, like less protein than you could before? So kind of like how we went from 6-row down to 2-row as the most basic way of looking at it. So how do we get from that, when we're not looking at feed barley, when we're looking at malt barley, how do we get those things that all the maltsters are like, how do we get to the market what our brewers are looking for that's going to give them the best efficiencies, it's going to give them the best protein that they can get out of it, and it's going to be able to get those convertible sugars as quickly as possible. So, which is 3 ways of saying the same thing essentially, but it's, we are, that's so I don't have a direct answer for you on that, but that's how that path goes.
So that's interesting. Idaho 7, I remember seeing a variety like 17 years ago.
Yeah.
As a like, hey, we're looking for people to grow this
right
on a certain level. As an IP, like that's the difficult part. It has to be identity preserved in the process.
There it is, and that is the tough part about it. Is you look at stuff like Sabro, for instance. I mean, again, Sabro is one of those ones that has been around for a bit now, but it's really taken off. Like, it makes sense now for growers to put that in the ground. And some of those varietals make a little bit more sense on the hop side because it's so varietal driven, whereas on the malt side it's more, you got to be into malts to really know your difference between the varietals. It's more in the kilning and the where it's coming from and that kind of stuff. So there's very much a terroir to malts that I find you're got to get it. You're going to brew a nice Czech Pils, then you might want to get, something from Franco Belge, or you might want to get something from Best Malts out of Germany. You want to get those. You want to get it from the source.
What's the third beer we're going to talk about?
Amsterdam.
Brown.
This was one of my first loves when it came to, once I broke out and started experimenting. I think I had mentioned before, my first one was probably Newcastle. As thin and watery as that beautiful deliciousness is, it's a great way to get into darker beers. And so the nut brown is, oh man, I was in Toronto 97. When's how Amsterdam's been around forever now. They've been, they're what, 35 years into this or something silly. They've been doing this a long time. Well, exactly, Derek. Yeah. 3 or 4 beers, back in the day. And the nut brown was one of them. And I was blown away by the fact I was like, how did they get a beer made out of nuts?
It's a fair question.
which is I don't ask that question anymore, not in this not doing what I do, but so the real difference is, I mean, you go from brown ales to porters into stouts, and there's a definite grading system in there, and the brown ales, you're going to get this lovely nuttiness. I think Amsterdam did a great job naming this thing. It is a nut brown, so you get a little bit of roastiness, but it's that nuttiness that starts to lean into chocolate. Whereas the porter goes from chocolate leaning into that roastiness. And then you get into stouts, and it's that roastiness leaning into espresso. So that's kind of where you start to see that, that spectrum happen. And I find that the brown ales, what I really like about them, number one, the color is absolutely stunning. It's a gorgeous beer. But you can have it any time of year. Like it lends itself to sitting on a patio. It lends itself to, that those days like today that are a little bit cooler, and you can still sit on a patio. You just have a hoodie on, and and I find it's a nice beer to sit around and just hang out in front of a fire.
Yep, that's very true. So I have a curiosity question. What's a master maltster called?
Gotta send me a list of the questions again, Bill. I can look a lot smarter that way. Don't know, actually. I don't know. I don't. Nope.
Maybe he's called a master maltster. I was just curious. I mean, it's got to be a skill as well as a science, like an art.
I'm sitting at my desk. I actually have 3 screens up here, so I can actually type this into one of the screens while we're actually chatting here.
No, don't even worry about it.
UK Malt calls it a master maltster, according to Google.
Thanks, Derek.
You are correct. That is the first. Yeah. All right, there you go. There's your answer, Bill. Derek for the win.
Okay. But that's got to be there's an art form to making malt, and then there's that science that goes into making a malt.
It sure does. It's knowing that balance. It's knowing when to stop. It's knowing that the Maltstro Fresh West. It truly is. It's finding that touch of what you're hoping to define. It would be nice if you could just turn a dial and be like, okay, it has to be roasted to 47 degrees to get to the perfect chocolate malts. But it doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't, because every batch of grain you're using is going to be slightly different.
Yep.
And like you say, the terroir has an impact on it.
Yep. You could be getting malt from 12 different fields, and everything's just a little bit different, and yep. You're trying to find that balance, and you're tasting, and just the smell that comes into the malt house is so absolutely incredible. They're the ugliest looking buildings in the world, but they're special. Like they are pretty amazing. If you can't love walking into a malt house and being in part of this industry, then you need to find a different industry, because it's really what stands out.
Derek's curious whether you guys use a blowtorch when you're doing an experiment.
No, that's exactly how it works, Derek. You got to figure first the malt straw, and now it's the process goes. You've got to start to sprout the barley, but you don't want it to. You got to stop the sprouting process at the right time, because what you're doing is you're breaking down you're breaking down those proteins so that you can get to fermentable sugars. So you stop that at a certain point in time, and then you dry it out. So it goes into a salad box, and you go through this process where you get everything dried out, and then you do the roasting process. So you're heating it slowly, and you're essentially you're heating usually from bottom up is what you're doing. So what they used to do traditionally, you would do flooring, like floor malting, which people are still it's a great marketing tool now, but it doesn't really give you the efficiencies that you're looking for that a proper salad box will get you. But you're essentially putting it into an oven and roasting the thing is more or less it's a kiln. You're kilning it, or you can put it into a circular roaster to do it as well. That's where you get your crystal malts from, is through that process. And then you get it to whatever temperature you want, whatever. I guess it depends highly on temperature, but it also depends on that level of roastiness that you want to get, depending on what you're looking for. The fact that it could have such a difference between, say, a Vienna and a Munich malt that you probably wouldn't be able to tell too much in this, but there is that difference. And the difference between a superior Pilsen, which is just a straight up two-row that has been cooked to a certain level, and your Euro Pils, where you need to have a definitive biscuity, grainy flavor to it, that with just a hint of that grassiness, that this stuff. This is why these guys are so good at what they do. And they're also, if you think brewers are their own special type of person, you should meet a maltster. These guys are, man, they're amazing. They're amazing to watch in action. It's really cool. Like it's amazing.
But is there like a feedback process where they take it further down the line and actually someone uses the new malt in a beer to figure, oh, this one's good, or this isn't quite what you're looking for? Or is the guy he knows all in his head?
This
is how it's going to translate.
This is how it's, I'm sure when we're translating when we did our development for the Euro Pils, there was a lot of that was happening. So we would it would go on a homebrew system. You'd be like, nope, this isn't what we're looking for. Or, but a lot of it is these guys they know what they're tasting. They know what they want. They know when they pick up that handful of malt and pop it in their mouth, they've got an idea of what they want. And now it comes out properly if you're making a small batch beer to get a lot of that through. But a lot of these guys just know by touch and taste, and it's pretty incredible. It's like, you walk into these places and you bend over and you pick up a handful of it, and it's almost like eating grape nut cereal, which is, it's pretty wild. It's pretty cool. I wish I knew more about that side of it, but I also like the mystery behind it a bit more too.
Yeah, Derek, it's like when we were looking at the hops when you helped us brew that time. You take the aroma, you understand how it's going to react, whether you dry hop it or you boil it, and you make that decision based on that. And 99% of the time you're going to be bang on, and then there's that 1% where, oops, didn't do it quite right.
I'll use a musical analogy to it. It's like somebody who's been playing guitar for a long time. Like when you first learn how to play, you have no idea what your shitty acoustic guitar is going to sound like with a bunch of other guys. After a while, you know exactly what that telly's going to sound like with that pickup that you have with it and that fuzz pedal, and you know what I mean. Like walking into it what you're bringing to the picture, and that's what an accomplished maltster brings to the table.
Yeah. So Mike's got a curiosity question for you. What dictates the amount of time a malt needs to fully convert the starches and sugars in a mash?
Oh boy, that's a great question. A lot of it depends on. It all begins in the field, obviously, Mike. Like it's how plump has that kernel gotten? Like how, where does that stand? How much protein is in there to begin with, or how much how much fermentable sugars are in there to begin with. So when that it all begins there. So if you're walking off a field and you've got a bunch of, you know, little teeny tiny kernel heads, you know damn well that you're not going to get what you're looking for that's coming off the field. You know that you're going to have bad efficiency, so you're not going to be able to convert those sugars the way that you want to. They're not going to hold up in the mash as nicely, so they're going to convert quicker than you want them to convert. And you know, so and then once you get to that stage, after you've gone through the whole kilning process and get it into the mash, are you turning it enough? Do you have the right temperature? Are you sitting on it long enough for those things to happen properly? You know, and there's, you know, again, like I said, I'm not a brewer, and there's more to that I need to know. I've got a couple of books that are sitting on my shelf right now from the MBAA that I read in very small amounts because I have to go back and reread them 12 or 13 times because I failed grade 10 chemistry, and that hasn't worked out real well for me, that I don't know what the hell the book's saying to me. But you know, there's a lot of that, and there's so much science behind it. But you're right, it's that mixture between science and art. And you know, I think Nickelbrook nailed it when they started using that slogan there a number of years ago. You know, it makes sense. So I, you know, as a good salesman, I think I just talked around that answer nicely. So
You're doing great. Thank you.
thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
So you touched on it a little bit briefly when we were talking about New Brunswick and beer prices earlier. What is Canadian Malt Group doing to control prices? Because I mean, you guys have got to be facing transportation cost increases, grain increases, energy increases.
We sure are. We are. It's less about controlling and more about getting the message out. So there are certain times of year. So right now we're at the harvest is done. So we're starting to get those silos filled. So right now we're probably working at about 20% new crop versus about 80% of crop from last year. So couldn't come at a better time. You know, you're running low. So when somebody needs a spot contract, so a spot contract versus a full contract, is spot contracts needed right now to fill up that bulk silo. Because they're out for whatever reason, they didn't forecast properly, or they just do, you know, they don't do a ton of bulk orders. So like some of the smaller breweries, so they'll only order on spot. But you know, what we're dealing with right now is probably our most expensive numbers that we've seen. So we have a couple of places where they need enough bulk to get through to the rest of the year. So it's probably they're going to need 3 or 4 more orders. So instead of me doing a contract that's going to take into account 3 or 4 orders based on the prices right now, I'm like, I'll do the one right now. Here's your numbers. They're ugly. They're, you know, there is nothing I can do about certain things on here. But what I can do is tell you to hold off on ordering the other 3 batches on a contract until we know the numbers are going down when we get the new crop. So we try to work with our customers that way. We're very honest with them. We have no control over fuel surcharge. Fuel surcharge is actually all carriers have the same fuel surcharge. It's an industry standard. They are not allowed to change that number whatsoever. So right now, when I started with the company, fuel surcharge was sitting around 18-19%. That was in April. It is 71% right now.
Wow.
It is gross. Like, and I mean, and I don't hide it. I don't even try to make it make sense to people. I'm like, here's what we're looking at. I can't do a damn thing about freight. It's ugly. But this is what you're looking at. So I try to find ways to make it easier for the customer to be able to do business. And that a lot of the times is, okay, maybe you're used to ordering a Maris Otter, which is it's a wonderful specialty malt that is, used for a lot of pale ales and a lot of those things. So how about we try using a superior pale? You know, it is not the same thing, but you're going to get, you're not going to get in the 9 out of 10. You're probably going to get an 8 out of 10. You know what I mean? Depending on how you brew, but it's a workable malt that fits in the same family that is a better price point. So, you know, trying to work with them on price point, trying to work on a pallet costs, like let's order more to fill up that pallet to get you to another tier so that, you know, we have tier pricing depending on what you order and that sort of stuff. So, you know, we're not going to be successful if our brewers aren't successful. And we don't want everybody to be going, you know, there's not a lot of places you can go in the industry right now. We're all facing the same thing. BSG is facing the same thing that we're facing. And if you're trying to undercut guys, you're only losing money in the long run. So not many people are doing it.
Well, I would imagine right now in this environment, you can't even afford to do it.
Yeah. I mean, Malt Europe tries, they come in with bulk numbers that make no sense to friggin' anybody.
Yeah.
You know, but how long can you do that before you don't have a company anymore, or at least not a sustainable one? So,
Yeah.
You know,
Curious about the variation in size of breweries that you work with.
man. So I deal specifically with breweries that are brew over 1,000 hectoliters a year. So we have a wonderful sales rep named Camille who lives out in Calgary, who deals with all the Canadian breweries that make less than 1,000 hectoliters. So all your, you know, so most of the breweries that I have down in my neck of the woods, like Charlottesville Brewing and News and New Limburg, stuff like that, they're all the smaller variety ones. So I don't deal with them. I start kind of, so Paris Brewing is would be right around 1,000 heads right now. So it's those ones that are starting to grow. Flux is another one that would be like that. Forefathers is one of mine. They're definitely larger than 1,000. It's
Wellington.
Wellington is, yeah, we work with Wellington on the bulk side. We work with Amsterdam. I work with Collective Arts. And get some of the large ones that just do bigger bulk. So Steam Whistle, they jump around whether they're using us or whether they're using BSG or, you know, stuff along those lines. So I mean, it's a pretty wide range of who we deal with. Concession Road in Jarvis is one of the smaller ones that I'm hoping he gets just a little bit bigger, because there's a music school in the same facility as Concession Road, and my daughter takes her piano lessons there. So every Wednesday while she's doing piano lessons, I'm drinking beer with Jeff at Concession Road. It's pretty fantastic. Love it.
He's just under that threshold that you can't.
Yeah. You know, the other side of it too is if you're in Ontario, you're my customer. I don't care. I do care about my numbers, like from a standpoint of what I have to hit and stuff. But if you need something, or if you just need a visit from a sales rep, cannot be in all places at all times, and she deals with most of her customers on the phone. So I will show up at your brewery and I will have a conversation with you and I will drink your beer, and I will be happy to do so. So, you know,
Yeah,
it's a wonderful job.
he's curious, like Molson's and Labatt's, the Anheuser-Busch, some Ontario. Would they be a customer that you guys would deal with, or do they have their own in-house?
Molson Coors has their own in-house. Some of the larger places do have their own in-house. However, we deal with like Mill Street, and we deal with like subsidiaries of Creemore. We deal with like that sort of stuff. So the big houses, like the big Molson Coors or Anheuser-Busch, like Budweiser, that kind of stuff, they have their own farmers. They have their own industries, what they have.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that fourth beer.
Fourth beer.
The porter.
Fourth beer is fashion time. It's in the big glass because I started it before we actually. I don't even have the can in front of me. So, Clifford Porter. 2019 Beer of the Year from the Canadian Brewing Awards. Also happened to be the same year that they won Brewery of the Year as well, actually. So they started up in 2015 or so. Brad Clifford, who, if you ever get a chance to meet the guy, is just a stand-up dude. Like, he is just wonderful to talk to. And I mean, he's the type of guy that the brewery could be burning around him, and he just have the same calm demeanor. It's just, he's such a wonderful man. Loved working with Brad. So, and this porter is one of the best porters that I've had in Canada. It hits all the marks. It's got that nice chocolatey deliciousness with that nice roastiness and a little slight nuttiness in there as well. And it's one of my desert island beers. Like, you could remove a lot of beers from this world and leave this one behind, and I'd still be pretty pleased with the whole thing.
It's the the conversation stream over there is like, wish we could have got Clifford at the LCBO because it wasn't available yet.
It's so funny enough. Obviously I was there on Friday for the Iron Brewers, and I didn't pick any up because the lineup was too long. When I was going to leave, there was everybody was kind of leaving, and people were picking up beer, plus the regular customers and all that. And I was like, oh, hell with it. So I ended up going to, because I was like, oh, screw it, I'll just go to my local LCBO, and I had to go to 3 LCBOs before I finally found it. I was just like, for the love of God, where are you? You know,
It's in short supply right now because I think they were in between batches.
Yeah, it's also the time of year where people start to get the darker beers a little bit more, and once people remember how good this beer is, they're like, oh shit, let's clear the shelves.
So what would be the couple hardest things that you're tackling right now in the industry?
Pricing is it's the biggest one. It truly is. It's having to explain price increases. It's trying to explain that China's in the open market because Australia won't deal with them anymore. So there's one more. Yeah, and China makes a lot of beer. So that's that's that. That's the war in the Ukraine. It has a huge effect. Weather patterns are garbage. When you're looking at all that stuff, you do have those issues to it. And it's, I try not to think of the negative. So I look at those and I'm like, all right, cool. This is what we're dealing with. We're all dealing with it. So let's do it. But it's when you talk to that small brewer that their margins aren't very good to begin with. And then you have to just be like, okay, cool. Here's what you have to pay now. So we've been doing a very good job of trying to increase volume so that we don't have to increase prices. So our sales team has been working diligently to get things turned around. One of the other industry, it's not necessarily in the industry, but one that we're facing right now is we just put in a brand new system. So we had to integrate an entire new back-end system into it. So first what we did was we did about 10 days of ordering blackout. So we had to get everybody to try to order beforehand because we weren't like, once the system went down, I cannot go get you a bag of malt. I just can't do it. My hands are tied. There's no way to track it. There's no way to do any of it. So that was shut down. Then the system came into place, and like any good system, there has been a bunch of kinks and a bunch of problems. And our CSRs, our order desk folks, have been trying to figure out how to do this new system, and so there's been so many issues when it comes to it. So that's the big thing that we're dealing with right now, and just trying to keep the trust with our brewers and let them know that, okay, this is temporary. This is, things are going to be much better once we get them sorted out. So we're on the right track now.
David's curious what system you guys switched over to, if you could share that with us.
Yeah, we use it's a D365, so Dynamics 365. So it's able to do. I mean, beforehand, what we had was we had about 8 different systems. So we had our accounting system, and we had our inventory management system, and then we had our finance system, and nothing speaks to each other. It's like any other business where you look at it and you're like, for Christ's sake. So what we've been trying to do is get everything on the same platform so that we're able to, everything will talk to each other a little bit better. Our next phase here in Canada is going to be probably towards the end of October, maybe beginning of November. We'll be doing our web store, our new web store. So we haven't had that before. So now we're going to be able to offer to brewers. No, you're right, David. It's not easy. It's terrible. But being able to offer to them that one-stop shop, they'll be able to see what's in stock, basically order on their cart and go from there. So it's going to be exciting when it happens. We decided to put it on hold for another month or so, only because of the fact that we don't need to add in something new and while we're still sorting out everything else. So I don't need my 63-year-old CSR who is doing a hell of a job on the order desk trying to learn this new system to up and quit because I don't know how to do my job without her. So
what could possibly go wrong if you added a complication to an already complicated situation?
Right? Yeah. So we did that. We did it in the States. We released it all at the same time in the States. And they were just like, we're just gonna hold off on Canada. And we were like, you do that. Because we can wait. We can wait.
No, but the goal is to put the information in the hands of your customer real time.
Yeah. It is, and right now we're doing it in a great way. We're able to do it in a way that we can the way that I describe this is it's like going to a restaurant and standing there at the door and you see 4 waitresses walk by you. Nobody says anything to you. And it's so annoying that you turn around and walk out the door. Whereas you go to another restaurant, you walk in, the place is jammed, you get a waitress that walks by, is like, hey, I'm swamped. I got to drop this food off. I'll be right back. Hold on, guys. They've recognized you. They're willing to. So people are willing to hear bad news or wait on stuff as long as somebody is open and honest with them. And that to me is the number one thing with any sales job, is just being able to communicate good, bad, and ugly to people.
Yeah. Adam, I've got about 20 more questions that I haven't asked you.
Feel free. I'm here.
No, I know you're here, but I'm just saying, like, this has been a fantastic conversation with you. And, thank you for giving us the gift of your time.
No problem.
And we'll get you back on again another day for all those other questions.
Always up for a chat, Bill.
I know you are.